Hey, welcome everybody. Steve Goodner here with Dr. Chuck Coker, and we're on another live session talking about a really important issue that Chuck and I have dealt with for decades in the workplace, and that's trust. And here's what I hope that you get out of this today. Number one, understanding how important trust is, and that trust is actually multidimensional,
Mhm.
that there are many different dimensions to trust. Chuck's going to talk about a lot of that today. Like we have done in previous live events, feel free to put questions or thoughts in the chat. I'll be tracking that as we go through the live event today. I'd love to know if you're with us. Maybe put in your name, put in where you're from, and I'm going to say it right now so everybody knows. We will be offering Chuck's Trustworthiness Index assessment free of charge to anybody who wants to put in their contact information in the chat. So if you want to be a part of that, if you would like to take that trustworthiness index, it was an eye opener for me for sure when I took that. So I think that would be well worth an investment of just a little bit of your time and no cost to you. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. Feel free, as I said, please let us know you're with us here in the chat, and I'll be watching that. Chuck, I want to start just at a high level. We often hear about the importance of trust, but what exactly is your definition of trust? Why does it matter so much in the workplace?
Well, trust is the foundation of building effective relationships within an organization, collaboration between different departments as well as teams, and it will have a profound impact on your organization's success. Trust can be defined as the confident belief in someone's relatability, their competence, and their honesty as they work with through good intentions. And let me tell you why. First of all, it enables effective teamwork and collaboration. It reduces workplace conflict and stress. It increases employee engagement within the organization, and that engagement is what's going to have a massive impact on retention.
Yeah.
It also does something that most people can't see, and it fosters innovation and decision making within the organization, because without that, there's no psychological safety. And this is a massive area that has risen to the forefront of organizations today. And if we don't address it, especially with the way the workforce is more remote now, we're going to have deeper problems than we have ever faced in the history. Because without that, we're not going to build the resilience. We're not going to be able to help people get to a point to where they're comfortable in actually taking risks
Yeah.
within the organization. And without risk, there is no innovation. So, what we're focusing on here today is the fact that we need to build communication flow more openly so that the feedback that is actually given between people and their managers, their leaders, and whoever it else might be can actually receive it constructively,
Yeah.
which builds that engagement, and people can work together towards common goals. It's, getting past that, you know, um, forming and storming stage in
Right.
the team development process without excessive supervision that inhibits this whole process. It's the glue that keeps these relationships together.
Yeah, I love that. And just add a few thoughts to that. Chuck. Many times I use a phrase, trust is the currency of getting things done. Because if you don't have that trust, then you don't have cohesion. You don't have teamwork. You don't have collaboration because everybody's kind of siloed or working for their own purposes. There's not a trust to engage with shared values, with shared purpose. And I think that's so good. And I know, and I keep reminding people, trust is an emotion. And so emotional intelligence here plays in, how important is the understanding of trust as an emotion, which means that it's something we can build. It's something that we can utilize. And one of the ways that I have done in the past, Chuck, is I use the trust equation. Trust equals credibility plus reliability plus connection divided by my self-interest, what I want to get out of stuff. And that right there is a great way to check trust levels with people, at least in your own mind. You can kind of predict what your trust levels are with people if you give each one of those a score of 1 to 5 and then work the equation. But I love what you're saying here about trust and how important it is. And the last thing I want to say about that is you used a key phrase that is a very hot topic right now for everybody, and that's engagement. How do we get the engagement, especially in remote and hybrid workforces? And that means enhanced connection to build more trust. We're going to have to level up our connection and trust building, I think, right?
We are, and we're going to address this remote workforce trust issue a little bit later, or whether it's in the next episode, whenever it's going to be, because it is critical.
Okay,
Absolutely
good. Good. Well, let me move on to the next question. I want you to share how trust directly affects economic performance and organizational results. So, what does your research reveal about the relationship between trust and productivity?
I'm glad you asked that, because trust has an absolutely significant impact on the economic performance and organizational culture within organizations. Now, I'm going to refer you to a white paper that Dr. Ira Wolf and I produced about a year and a half or 2 years ago. Absolutely critical, because there's a lot of research in it, and high profile people have added that research to it. So I'm just going to give you the information now, but if you want the research behind it, please feel free to go to lifethrive.com under our resources link, and you can find it. So let's talk about that. First of all, high trust organizations are 2 to 3 times higher in their stock margins than companies that are low trust organizations. 2 to 3 times higher stock market returns. And that is absolutely amazing, but it's been documented by Place to Work Institute. Number 2, workplace productivity actually increases by approximately 1/3 with employees experience 74% less stress and 40% less burnout. I don't know about you, but those are literally mind-blowing statistics. And the bottom line is that it comes through reduced absenteeism and healthcare cost. Now, let me comment on that before we go on to the 3rd, 4th, and 5th points. When we talk about less stress and less burnout, it is so important, because absenteeism is one of those leakage points in organizations today that companies don't actually see. They don't see themselves actually seeing the money flow out underneath the door through absenteeism and less productivity. We know that people that are even somewhat disengaged have a huge impact on the profitability of an organization. But the ones that are actively disengaged are having even more massive impact because they are exhibiting passive aggressive behavior against the organization, which inhibits the workplace productivity of the people that are at least somewhat engaged. That's scary, Steve.
Well, yeah.
Number 3, employees are 106% more energetic at work where there's trust. And it takes 13% fewer sick days, and they report 76% higher engagement. Again, off the charts information. And our experience with employee turnover is that half of the employees in low trust organization, between 50 and 200% of their annual salary is what it costs to replace someone
Yeah.
within the organization. And that's massive financial savings. But here's the key: trust accelerates the decision-making process and information sharing. In other words, when you have team members that are helping each other, contributing to their knowledge management acquisition, and improving their productivity, it's easier to make decisions. And as they make those decisions, things get done more quickly, more efficiently, and definitely more effectively.
Okay. Good. Wow, there's a lot in there, Chuck. And I just want to say thank you for sharing that, because one of the things I want to make sure that people know, when we come and do these events, this isn't intended to promote a product. It's not intended to boost our egos. Goodness knows we don't need that. So,
For sure.
um, we do that ourselves very well. But the reality is we want to bring real value to people. And part of my understanding of the way the human brain works is if if you're going to change, if you're going to start something new, you have to have a threshold level of perceived value
Mhm.
that says, okay, this starts to make sense.
Mhm.
If I need to connect more and build more trust with my people to get a better bottom line impact,
Mhm.
then I need to figure out what I need to do that. Now, some people will do that because they want to do that. Other people will do that because that's just who they are. And other people will be focused on the numbers, and that's okay. It's okay to be focused on the numbers. So this trust thing has real ROI.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
I mean, from what you're saying to us, this is big.
It's it's more massive than people even have a concept of understanding. Because here's what Simon Sinek says about this. First of all, about 70% of CEOs understand that there's a trust issue within the organization. Less than 25% act on it.
Hmm.
They know there's a problem, but they don't know what to do, how to approach it, or how to build these things. And the information's there. It's there. We've documented it over literally thousands and thousands and thousands of employees.
Yeah. And 6 Seconds, the largest emotional intelligence community in the world, they did a study. They do a study every couple of years, and I was looking at the most recent one, and they have very similar numbers. One of the things that just hit me in the face when I looked at that study was that employees trust their direct supervisor less than 50%.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Like 48, 49%. They trust executive leadership at about a 25% level.
Okay.
That's a huge gap because without trust, you're not going to get engagement. Chuck, let me move on here. You've identified you've identified five critical constructs of trust:
Mhm.
transparency, relatability, predictability, feasibility, and empowerment. Those are all included in the trustworthiness index.
Mhm.
Which of these, though, do you find is the most foundational and why?
Well, you're asking me a question that I have pulled my hair out about.
Okay, this is like, which one of your five children do you love the most? Right?
Exactly. Exactly. But I've thought about it a lot, and trust me, Steve, we're going to dig into this later in the broadcast, and I'm going to bring out why I have come to this conclusion,
Okay.
because it's very, very important. Organizations need a concrete way to measure this. And so as we focus on this, one of the things that we see is critical is that predictability, that intrapersonal aspect of our personality creates a sense of reliability and consistency that other trust elements must rely on in order to develop more profusely. And let me explain why I'm saying that. When people know what to expect from other people, which is predictability,
Right.
they can actually more comfortably engage in transparent communication. They can build relational connections, and they can assess the feasibility of the commitments that you're asking them to make, and they actually feel empowered by what
Mhm.
you're bringing to the table. So without predictability, it becomes difficult to actually establish someone with consistently going to apply trust and the other components in the process. Now, I say this because I think there's a strong case to actually be made for each of the components, because each component serves a foundational and a different context. For example, transparency might be critical in a new relationship.
Mhm.
However, information sharing builds that initial trust, while empowerment might be foundational in establishing relationships where growth is the focus in the organizations. Because you and I know we've been in this business a long time, and companies hit the wall.
Yeah.
They grow to a point and they quit growing. And the reason is the lack of creativity and innovation. And that will never happen unless employees are empowered.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, wow. Okay. So basically, if you had to pick one, it's predictability, but the others are just as important in their own way.
They're so critical. As we talk, Steve, we're actually doing studies right now on actually expanding these areas in the trustworthiness index that is going to broaden it a little bit further. And so, watch out, guys. Something new is coming to the trustworthiness index, and it's going to be even more profuse and stronger. I think you know me well enough to know that every 2 years we revamp everything. I can't afford to let things get stale.
Yeah.
The credibility of our organizations, I know you feel the exact same way, are
Mhm.
critical to our customer and client base.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's move on and shift gears just a minute here.
Okay.
How do you differentiate trust from trustworthiness in your assessment? These are easy questions, Chuck. Come on. Um, why why is it important to measure both of those? I mean, because most people are going to think trustworthiness, pretty much the same thing, but you don't treat it that way.
No, you can't, because they're closely related, but they're completely different concepts. You see, trust is a belief or attitude held by the trustor, the person who trusts,
Right.
in what the other person says. And it actually represents their willingness to be vulnerable to another party. And it provides the expectations that the intentions and the behaviors of the other individual are trustworthy. So it's subjective, not objective. Trust is subjective because it exists in the mind of the trustor and involves taking risks by putting yourself out there. Now, trustworthiness, on the other hand, is a quality of characteristics of the trustee, the person being trusted. It encompasses actual behaviors, attributes, and qualities that make someone deserving of trust. And it is objective and can be measured through observable behaviors and actions. That's why in the online course, we actually identify how your behaviors are impacting your trustworthiness and your ability for other people to actually trust. So let's just focus very simply. Trust is given by others to you. Trustworthiness is demonstrated by you to others. And it's important because an organization simply cannot directly control whether employees or customers trust them, but they can control and improve their trustworthiness.
I like that. I like
So
that a lot.
the good thing is that the trustworthiness index actually measures those aspects.
So when I think of, there's a phrase that I use consistently, and that, do you want to become a leader worth following? Trustworthiness has to be a big part of that.
You're wasting your time otherwise.
Right.
Simply wasting your time.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. So next easy question. Are you ready?
But of course.
um, in your experience, what's the biggest mistake leaders make that damages trust within their teams or their organization?
Oh, this one's simple.
Okay.
It's inconsistency between their words and their actions. My goodness. It's you've heard the old phrase, walking your talk,
Yeah. Yeah.
doing what you say you're going to do. When leaders say one thing and do another, it's like going to a website. We believe in our employees, and walk in there and the turnover is 50% a year.
Hmm.
So many times the words on websites are so misleading, especially when it comes to mission, vision, and values. There's an inconsistency, and that creates what Covey says is the credibility gap that organizations simply create within their cult. And it damages the fundamental level of trust for several reasons. Let me share those with you. First of all, it signals that the leader's words can't be relied upon.
Hmm.
Number two, it creates double standards, maybe between the C-level people and when they exempt themselves from the expectations of the line workers.
Right.
It undermines those values that I just referred to that are there on the website and that the HR department sells when the right employee steps in for those interviews. But worst of all, it creates cynicism within
Mhm.
the organization. And when there is cynicism within the organization, guess what? Disengagement goes through the roof.
Yeah.
So this inconsistency damages literally every dimension of trustworthiness, competence, and asks people, will they actually deliver? It also has a huge impact on integrity within the organization. If there's no integrity in the organization, are we displaying integrity to our customers that are going to have the long term impact on whether this company remains profitable and focuses on what needs to be focused on? You see, effective leaders understand that trust is built through consistent alignment between what they say and what they do, especially during challenging times. We've experienced this during COVID, and people begin to scrutinize organizations much more clearly and much more closely. I can tell you that people do not shop the way today that they did prior to COVID.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I mean, Walmart delivers to the front door,
Right,
right? So
right.
sounds good to me. You hit on a couple of things and it keeps resonating with me here as you're talking about this, Chuck. The old phrase, employees don't leave companies, they leave managers.
That's right.
This is probably one of the primary reasons that happens
That's right.
because they're
That's why 85% of the people surveyed that have been in the workforce for over 20 years have left the company because of their manager, not because of the organization.
yeah.
85%.
And that has to be directly related to trustworthiness and
Absolutely.
how much trust the employee can have in that manager. The other thing you said that resonate really strongly with me was this thing about integrity. I
Mhm.
cannot tell you how many organizations that I've worked with that one of their core values is integrity.
Mhm.
Okay. And when I talk to organizations about their core values, and even teams, leaders of teams about their core values in that team, and they tell me what they are, integrity being one of those, I'll say, is that an aspirational value or an applicational value?
There you go.
And most of them say, I don't understand. It's just our value. And I'm going, well, here's how I like to look at it. If I were to spend a day in your offices or with your people, how would I see integrity played out? That's an applicational value. Whereas an aspirational value is we kind of would like to get there, but we're not quite there yet. And that's why this is so important because everything you say, I just keep coming back to that second question we talked about, that there's real ROI around how much trust that an organization has
Mhm.
between individuals, in teams, between leaders, and all of that. Let's move to the next question, Chuck, because I think this is going to get us even deeper into this discussion. Given the increase in remote and hybrid workforces, this is
Mhm.
this is a big deal here. How can leaders build and sustain trust effectively when teams aren't physically together?
This is critical to our future, Steve. Organizations that don't get this, so many of them are requiring that employees come back into the office. And this reduces the freedom of moms picking up their kids, of dads not being able to do this or that. When they were given the freedom to work remotely, we notice that in the majority of the organizations, productivity did not go down that much, if at all. So the key is focusing on clear expectations and consistent communication rhythms. Now, when teams aren't together, they still need these rhythms. Therefore, the structure of the interaction is critically important.
Mhm.
It's not just regular one-on-ones, but it's team meetings with clear agendas, just like you would have if they're sitting together, and transparent communications, because you can see a lot if it's online video, especially when you can bring the picture together of people rather than them sitting way back here, and you can't see things, it's you got to see the transparency of the individual. Second of all, we want to actually leverage technology intentionally rather than overwhelming the teams with this technology. You see, with video, we can have actually meaningful conversations. And those conversations with the facial expressions I just talked about um, don't require a camera in every interaction, but it can, because that can, shall we say, create Zoom fatigue.
Right.
But these communications real time continue to build the interactions between people. And, little rabbit trail here, but one of the things that we've learned over time is that the majority of the workforce is in one personality, not the majority, but a close to majority. 2 out of every 5 people are what behavioral analysts call that steady aspect,
Yeah.
where people tend to be good listeners. And what we have to remember is that these are the people that are the glue that keep the organization stuck together. And if they don't build trust, there's a problem. And how did they build trust? Through frequency of communication, email, Zoom, newsletters, interaction that comes from multiple directions, and remembering to repeat the important things that build connection over time and in different working styles and in different time accesses. So frequency is critical. The other thing too, especially with remote people, is to focus on outcomes, not activity.
Yeah.
Have you done this? Have you done that? Have you done this? It will make the employee feel like they're being micromanaged. And we can't afford that, because the more they feel micromanaged, what a lot of companies don't understand, Steve, is that many people that feel micromanaged start looking for other kinds of work to supplement.
Mm.
And they will do these other things kind of on the sly because they're not being monitored. If they have that frequent communication and they are focused on production rather than activities to make somebody happy, you don't have to move them in. They're going to get things done. So we need to be creating additional virtual spaces where they have this social communication. And here's why, Steve, so critical. Informal communication and interaction significantly impacts trust development.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that trust development is what causes a person to be productive in their environment. And it intentionally creates opportunities to connect on a personal level. One of the things that working together is we build friendships and we have lunch together and stuff like that. Well,
Yeah.
guess what? We can still have those intimate conversations through Zoom or Teams or whatever. But most of all, we have to model vulnerability and authenticity within these conversations to make sure that there is trust. Leaders have to show their human side. This
Right.
is one thing I have preached for decades, and people just don't get it. It's all about ticking off the boxes. We got to admit our mistakes. We
Right.
got to tell them stories about when I screwed this up so bad. I learned for a lifetime that you don't do this in your work environment. What are the personal challenges that I'm facing as a leader? You may not be able to relate to it in your particular role, but guess what? I'm trying to juggle some balls, but I'm also trying to be there for you and demonstrate empathy in a way because I know what you're going through because I sat in that seat at
Yeah.
one time. That will build trust with a remote employee.
Yeah. Yeah. And Chuck, oh wow, there is so much good information here for everybody that's watching this. There's a couple of things again that resonated with me. The value exchange has changed.
Yeah.
Used to be, I will give you my hours, you give me dollars. I will come to your place, your office, your place of work. I will be a part of your organization. I will do that. Well, now the value exchange is very different. People are looking for different things. It isn't just about dollars anymore.
That's
It's
right.
about, honestly, in many ways, it's about how much do I trust you?
Mhm.
Do I trust you as an employer to take good care of me from a financial perspective? But do I trust you to grow me and develop me? Do I trust you to encourage me? Do I trust you? Go ahead. What are you thinking?
Oh man, this goes right back to our 4 C's that we talked about. The company says, can they do the job and will they do the job? And the employee says, is this a great place to work? And are you going to build my resume? That's where the trust comes in. And you hit the nail on the head, Steve, when you brought that whole point up.
Yeah. And that right now, especially with remote and hybrid workers, because that is an environment where quiet quitting can grow wild because there isn't that oversight of being in a physical office and having your manager or leader supervisor right around the corner. This is a different environment where trust is so much more important. As a leader, I need to be able to trust you, and so our focus needs to be more outcome based than task oriented.
Uh,
It needs to be more motivating and engaging for people. I actually love your idea of having lunch together on Zoom. Why
Absolutely.
not? I've encouraged some of my clients do a happy hour on Zoom.
That's right.
Um,
I'm just not going to share my chocolate chip cookie with you.
oh man, there is something wrong with that. Okay, so well, Chuck, we've covered a lot of ground today, and we're trying to keep these in a certain time frame because I know people have busy schedules. I'm going to post back up here on the screen real quick. If you want to take advantage of the offer of the Trustworthiness Index at no cost to you, please say something in the chat to us, or you can reach out to me by email, and I will put that in the chat here so that you all can have it. Chuck, let's tie this together. We're going to do a part 2 on this because we're only halfway through the questions.
Really?
Yeah, we only made it halfway through, and that's okay.
Okay.
But if you were to kind of take what we've talked about today and kind of put a bow on it, what would you say?
Oh gosh, Steve. You know, one of the things that I think that we have forgotten, lost, or somewhere got pushed back in the shuffle of things is the need for us to exhibit the kind of behaviors, attitudes, and motivations that welcome a person into their role
Mm.
rather than treat them as if they were a number. I can't tell you how many people I have met that said, I love the company, but I don't like to go to work.
Huh.
You know,
Wow.
it's just so challenging. Building trust is not that hard. All you have to do is display the aspects that we can literally measure for you right now and illustrate a way to walk you through this process. And I hope we can get to a point next session, Steve, where I can show you how the online course that I have set up will literally build the process of teaching you how to do this in very simplistic approaches that anybody in their right mind could just apply literally overnight. And building trust is not that hard if we're willing to get out of our fixed mindsets,
Mm.
moving into that growth mindset. Because I can tell you this, a person who has never worked in the organization can come in with a good idea or concept and bring innovation to a stale organization and get them over the hump where they've been hitting the wall and revenues are stagnant. They can get them over the wall. And we have to be smart enough to listen. And the way we do that, as you and I have talked about many, many times, is asking questions.
Yeah.
A leader who understands how to lead with questions is going to be a leader who gains the information about where the people are in their workplace. And in doing that, they can actually reinvigorate the workforce and build it to a place to where it exceeds the expectations of even the leadership.
Yeah. Excellent. And that it plays so much into what you and I have done in our most recent work together around becoming an emotionally intelligent leader. It is asking those good questions. It's practicing empathy, understanding perspectives, gaining trust, building trust with people, which is what this has been all about. Love your idea about our next session, focusing in on the way we build courses and the way we put them together, because you and I come from a very unique approach to building online courses. There's a zillion online courses out there, but it's like buying a used car. If you don't pick the one that fits you and that works right, you're going to be very disappointed.
Mhm.
So we build the courses in a very specific way using a lot of the neuroscience training that I've had and the way we know to apply things. How do you take it from learning to application? I think that might be a great idea, Chuck, and help people understand how this works, specifically in the trust area, because trust is so critical. But that would apply to some of the other courses that we've created. And frankly, just give people a nice little checklist in how to identify courses that will be of value to them. I love that idea. Thank you so much, Chuck, for your insight, for your wisdom, for all of this excellent input that you have provided today. We will pick this up again in our next session in a few weeks, and we'll really focus in and finish out this trust topic because it is becoming so critical. Would One last question: would you agree that trust must become a core practice and a core value of organizations if they want to create a competitive advantage and succeed in the future?
Steve, I got to smile when you ask me a question like that, because a leader who does not understand that is doomed for failure.
Yeah.
Maybe not short term, because they can institute some policies and procedures that might help. But in the long term, if you want that company to sustain itself over a period of time, if you don't have trust, pardon the expression, you ain't got nothing.
No, and I think that might be a great place to leave this today, Chuck. So thanks everybody for joining us. For those that'll watch this in the future, I hope you'll get a lot of value out of this. There's a lot of value in it for sure. And Chuck, look forward to seeing you next time, my friend.
You bet.